I didn't even get a drink on that one. Alrighty. I don't want today's conversation to come across sales pitchy in any way whatsoever, so I'm going to do my best to keep my studio and what I'm talking about today totally separate. Now, before I get into that, I will mention, yes, I run a design studio called Homestead Studios where we design kitchens for clients all over North America. Now, our design studio revolves specifically around IKEA kitchen cabinetry and using it to design a various number of different rooms, whether it's office spaces, mud rooms, back entrances, laundry rooms, but primarily we deal in kitchens. So, I will throw a link down in the description below as one up in the top corner if you want to check out a little bit more about us or want to work with us. Head over there, but that's it. That's it for Homestead Studios in this conversation. So if you're sitting there wondering why make this video at all, there's a couple reasons for it. First, I've had a lot of questions from friends and family and acquaintances over the years about how to hire and work with a designer, not just specific to kitchens, but designers in general. Second, another YouTuber made a great video discussing budget and expectations when sitting down with clients. So that led me to think, how can we create a smoother process when we're working with our clients? So I wanted to sit down and make a video all about how to work with a kitchen designer. Whether you're after a minor facelift or a complete gut job, a kitchen designer can be one of the best investments you make. Think of it this way, or as a general rule of thumb. If you're going to spend thousands on new appliances or cabinets or flooring or tile, you get my point, it is likely worth spending a few hundred to work with a designer. A kitchen designer has the ability to pull from past experience and past design work they've done in other kitchens, some of which will likely relate to your project. In addition, they're just a fresh perspective, a second set of eyes on your space, which is sometimes all it takes to cue a new idea or come up with a new concept that maybe you haven't thought of. Alright, so number one on this list is know your budget. And that other YouTuber I talked about earlier is Mark Tobin over at Mark Tobin Kitchen Designs. Not too long ago, Mark put out a great video discussing the realities of kitchen budgets and how designers and clients often need to get themselves on the same page about how far a dollar can actually travel during a kitchen renovation. So I'm not going to dive too deep into this topic because I think Mark has already done a fabulous job covering it, so I'll leave a link down to his video in the description. But what I will say is there's no point in keeping your budget secret from your kitchen designer. The more information you can give them about your budget and your expectations for the space, the better a space they can create for you. So next up on my list is do some of your own research. It's a great idea to have some of your own ideas about general design styles or maybe some kitchen appliances or even some different cabinet styles that you like or might want for your space. So I'm not saying to sit down on the computer for hours on end, but having some general idea of some of your likes and dislikes will make any initial meeting and subsequent design discussions with your kitchen designer that much smoother as you go through the process of coming up with your new space. So for example, one of the things I always ask my clients for is some design inspiration photos or a Pinterest board of photos that have piqued their interest for their future space. So not only does this help me and them get on the same page as far as what they're expecting, but it also helps me throughout the design process to ensure I'm going to deliver a design that they're actually going to be happy with, and not something totally out of left field that they have no interest in at all. So you've done some research, you've had an initial meeting, maybe you even hired a designer. Which leads me to number 3, be flexible. There's a saying I often heard working with other contractors and sub-trades on projects, and that is champagne dreams on a beer budget. And it seems somewhat crude, but it's often true, and we often sit down and have these grand expectations without really considering how far our dollar can go in a lot of these projects. And that goes for me too in some of my own cases. Oftentimes we're smacked with reality that sometimes we need to be flexible. So let me give you an example. You may love the idea of a certain type of countertop, let's say marble, but your budget is just simply not going to allow for it in your space, or maybe it might not even work with your lifestyle. But your designer might be able to introduce you to some options you hadn't considered when it comes to countertops, say quartz or granite. Your designer is not trying to specifically exclude these countertops from your kitchen, they're often just taking into account other things like budget and your lifestyle. A good designer will also keep you from sacrificing function for beauty. There is no point in creating a beautiful kitchen that doesn't function as a kitchen. Now, I don't know about you, but my wife and I spend a lot of time in our kitchen. We have 3 kids. They are constantly hungry, so we are always prepping food. And there is no point in having a beautiful kitchen space that doesn't actually function well, because it'll just annoy us every time we have to go work in it. With all that being said, bring your ideas to the table, but be open to change throughout the process. My coffee is getting cold again. This brings me to number 4, and it's an important one, and that is discuss your timelines and the number of revisions that are often included with your design. No kitchen designer, or at least none that I know of, expect to nail your design first try. They're going to expect to go through some revisions and some back and forth with you as you go throughout the entire design process. It is important that both you and your designer are on the same page about how long the process might take, and how many revisions they're going to include during this process. Some designers work by the design, like we do at Homestead Studios. We work by one kitchen design or one laundry room design, whereas others might work by the hour and charge you for every revision you make throughout the process. So it's important both you and your designer are on the same page right from the get-go. It'll just alleviate some of the headache and problems that could crop up later as you go through the design process. That brings me to the next point on the list, which is minimizing late changes to the design, or even more so, late changes during the construction process. Change orders can range from mild inconvenience all the way to major headache, major issue, depending on how far you are through either the design process or the construction or through the construction process. So a single change can often impact more than just your timeline. Changes often have a waterfall effect in nature, where one change requires another change, which then requires another, and before you know it, you're revamping the entire design right from step 1. However, with all of that being said, if you notice a major problem that must be corrected for you to enjoy your kitchen, don't wait, speak up now, deal with it now, no matter what stage you're at. There's no point in dealing with this problem for years and years to come, because that is going to be the thing you fixate on, not the overall finished kitchen once everything is done. And last but certainly not least is have a little bit of patience. As someone who has worked with both designers, contractors, subcontractors, tradesmen, you name it, as well as watched family and friends go through renovations, having a little bit of patience will save you an immense amount of headaches and stress as your renovation chugs along. So back on the design side of things, a great kitchen design can take time. However, I often find the more time and energy you spend in the early stages of the design process, the happier you will be in the long run. So for example, our family lived here for 2 years before we began tackling the renovation of the main floor and kitchen area. Now during that entire time, my wife and I were scheming and planning different iterations of what the kitchen could be and the different layouts we could have. Now the reason we waited wasn't only financial to save up enough to actually undertake the renovation, it was also from the standpoint of figuring out what would work best in the space and how did we use our house. We wouldn't really have known those answers without spending the time in the space beforehand. Now the interesting aspect is the final design we wound up with was very, very different from the initial iterations we started with. Now, as I often do with these list type videos, I've got a bonus tip for you, and it's not necessarily design related, but it's related to those that are going to be hiring people to complete their renovation. And that is, don't rush your contractors. As someone who works on both the design and contracting side of things, I can tell you firsthand that a rushed construction project never goes well. What I often tell my clients is to allow their contractors to take as much time as needed to perfect the space, no matter how excited they are to get into that kitchen once it is complete. Now with all of that being said, it's important to remember that it's within reason. If you haven't heard or seen or talked to your contractor in weeks or even months, that's a problem. That is not within reason. That needs to be sorted out. However, if you have somebody there working every day, the project is moving forward, but it's going a little bit slower than you anticipated, and maybe even slower than they anticipated, it's important to remember that renovations just sometimes go that way, and having a little bit of patience, like I mentioned earlier, can be key to your sanity throughout the entire process. I just know it's going to be cold. Well everybody, thanks for clicking and watching this week's video. Hopefully it gave you a little bit of insight into what the kitchen design process and what it's like to work with a kitchen designer. If you enjoy content like this, make sure to smash that subscribe button down below and click that little bell icon. That way you don't miss any of our future content. And while you're down there, head on over, check out Mark's channel. He's got a lot of great information when it comes to kitchen design as well. And yeah, with that, we'll see you guys next week.